Every single player will start to decline at some point in their career, and sometimes the aging process is very graceful. Standouts in this category would be LeBron, Kareem, and Karl Malone. But I think their one-of-a-kind genes definitely had a lot to do with the abuse their bodies could take as well as their longevity. All three players are gifted exceptionally for their size. But there are other players who have aged well despite not having superhuman physiques. For example, Grant Hill, who despite a litany of injuries was able to average 13 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists at the age of 38. And John Stockton, who was able to average 10 points and 7 rebounds at 40. And on the other end of that, there are players who don't age as well. And in a lot of cases, that is due to injuries that come with age. But in the rare case, a player is moving in a good direction, having a solid career, and then it all just stops, and they fall off completely. There are a few players who you could make a case for being in that category, but the one we're going to focus on today is Hedo Turkoglu. His weird year with the Raptors that seemed to spark the downfall of a truly great player. Hedo was always a fun player to watch, and he had attributes that made him impactful as well. Being 6'10" but very mobile, able to shoot the three and pass very well for a player that size. The way he played the game, you wouldn't think he was 6'10". His two best years were with the Orlando Magic. He averaged 19 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists, and 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. These back-to-back seasons raised his stock as a free agent, and in the 2010 offseason, there were a lot of teams who could use Hedo's talents as a point forward. Many teams pursued him, but Toronto came out on top and signed him to a 5-year, $53 million deal, which was actually considered a steal by some writers, and honestly, paying someone who puts up numbers like that $10.6 million a year really is a good deal. But it still ended up being a bad deal. What happened between his last 2 seasons in Orlando and his first season in Toronto was remarkable. A player who looked like he was getting better and was actually given the award for getting better in 2008, averaged 11 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists, and he shot 40% from the field, which was worse than his rookie year. He shot 77% from the free throw line, shooting 86% just a few years earlier. The season wasn't injury plagued either, as he only missed 8 games. So what happened? Raptors fans watched this year very closely, as if you recall it was a big year for upcoming free agents, and I want to make it clear right now, if Hedo came in and did what he was supposed to do, and the Raptors made the playoffs instead of missing it by 1 game, Bosh still would have left. But there are still a huge amount of things that went wrong for the Raptors this year, and Hedo was a big part of that. By 2010, Bosh had played 4 seasons alongside Andrea Bagnardi, and I'm sure he knew his limitations. He had waited on Colangelo to surround him with talent, stuck through the 2-point guard system twice, dealt with Colangelo's unrealistic faith in Jose Calderon, underwent almost the full 2010 season with Jay Triano as a head coach, and now had Hedo on his team. But the weird part is that it wasn't Hedo on the team. Well, at least it didn't look like it. He didn't look anything like the Hedo we had seen before, especially in Orlando. It was clear that he had lost his swagger, and he looked disconnected from the game on both ends. His play made him seem uninterested, and he would take bad shots and make bad decisions on offense. And keep in mind, he was a player who was known for taking big shots and making smart plays in crunch time. He looked nothing like he did in the past. I never thought that bringing Hedo would keep Bosh around, but I'm sure that some fans did. And of course I wanted Bosh to stay. But looking at the trend of free agents in Toronto, I already knew it was over. And to this day, Hedo Turkoglu is the biggest free agent the Raptors have signed, which is sad but comes as no surprise seeing as a lot of players don't want to move to Canada and pay more taxes. So what we really had riding on after this season was Hedo, Bagnardi's development, and a young DeMar DeRozan. Looking at that, you can see that it's not the most solid plan for a franchise. But the multicultural city that drew him in now had him for 5 years, and regretted the decision more and more as the season went on. Here's a brief timeline of how the season went. So they were coming off of a 33-win season the year before. The mood in the franchise was that the Raptors were a playoff team this year, and honestly, in the weak East they should have been. But they started off the season 7-13. They actually held a team meeting because of how bad they were, and it looked like they might fire Jay Triano, which they didn't, so they probably just really talked about how bad they were. But miraculously, the bad meeting in December yielded results because they went 18-6 after it, which was the second best stretch to the Cavs. So somehow the Raptors were 29-23 at the All-Star break, which 1, was amazing for this Raptors team at the time, and 2, with that record at the All-Star break, you think that team would make the playoffs. But the remainder of the season, oh man. A lot of it was due to injuries, as Bosh, Bagnardi, and Turkoglu all suffered injuries in the second half of the season. Also, after a while, Jay Triano benched DeRozan and Hedo for Sonny Weems and Antoine Wright, not joking by the way. In the last 30 games, they went 12-18 and finished with a 41-41 record. Not only missing the playoffs, but missing the playoffs by 1 game, and it was decided on the last night of the regular season. Chicago won their game that night and ended up taking the 8th spot. Obviously, Toronto lost theirs. So Hedo was actually coming off of the bench by the end of the season. Can you believe that? In my opinion, it was Hedo's poor play and Jay Triano's poor coaching. But Hedo had some off-the-court issues that seemed to suggest that his awful performance throughout the season went beyond the court too. I wanted to address the on-court aspect of his year first to show that there was definitely something up with him during the season. And there were two incidents in particular that helped me form my idea of what I think happened, and that's that he just didn't really care. The first incident happened during the last stretch of the season where we were actually in playoff contention. Hedo was seen at a Turkish nightclub in downtown Toronto having a good time, which wouldn't be weird if he didn't miss the game that same night with a stomach virus, again during a crucial part of the year. And secondly, maybe even a bigger reason that shows that he just didn't care, was in a certain post-game interview with Jack Armstrong. Jack asked Hedo, "You came out tonight early, aggressive. What was different for you tonight in terms of setting the tone with your game in this game?" And Hedo answered that question with, "Ball." And then he just looked him dead in the face. He didn't even just say ball and walk away. He said ball and just looked him in the face to see what would happen, just to let him drown in confusion a little bit. And there was literally a 4-second pause, and Jack was like, "You had the ball in your hands, and you did a lot with it." And Hedo replied, "I got nothing else to say," with a smile. Jack played it cool to the end of the interview, but you can tell on the inside he was like, what the hell was that? But what that was to me was physical evidence of not really caring and not really being invested. There are probably more reasons to it that we don't know. I mean, maybe he wished that he re-signed with Orlando, who was 59-23 that season and second in the East. Whatever it was, Hedo confirmed it himself. In a phone interview with Fox Sports Arizona, he completely let out his feelings about Toronto, although it seemed like his biggest issue was with Brian Colangelo. He said that people have to realize something is wrong with that organization and nobody wants to go there anymore. It's not just the players who see this. He was upset with Brian Colangelo for accusing Chris Bosh of checking out late in the season, which Hedo said isn't true. But even if it was true, I wouldn't blame Bosh. He had to put up with a lot under Brian Colangelo, and him and Hedo were both done with him, as Bosh left for Miami that year and Hedo was traded, after just one season, to Phoenix for Leandro Barbosa and Dwayne Jones on July 14th, 2010. And after that, Hedo went on to play 7 more seasons, never having one as good as his year with the Raptors, and he retired in 2015 at 35. Hedo truly was a good player in his time and was a fan favorite anywhere he went, except for Toronto. His year in Toronto sparked a decline that is really unlike anyone I've ever seen. Thanks for watching, everybody.